We are following some breaking news. Tina Turner has died at the age of 83.
That news coming to us, according to her spokesperson, no cause of death was released. Now, the 8-time Grammy Award winner was known as simply the best.
You're simply the best. Better than all the rest. Better than anyone. Anyone I ever met.
Turner rose to stardom with the act started by her ex-husband, Ike, and their classic Proud Mary. But it was not until decades later that she revealed that relationship was plagued by abuse.
She agreed to a divorce settlement that left her with virtually nothing. But Turner went on to reinvent herself musically, including recently with a Broadway show and a documentary about her life. One of my favorite Tina Turner quotes, "Sometimes you've got to let everything go, purge yourself. If you're unhappy with anything, whatever is bringing you down, get rid of it, because you'll find that when you're free, your true creativity, your true self comes out."
Yeah, she was someone who had seen an evolution through the years. She was born Anna Mae Bullock in rural Nutbush, Tennessee. She was living in St. Louis in the late 50s when she actually met Ike Turner, who was performing at a local club there. But as we have just mentioned, she revealed many years later, after the success of that group, that it was an abusive relationship, at which point she then went on to develop her own solo career, essentially reinventing herself and going on to a very successful career as a solo artist in which she influenced generations of performers after her.
She is survived by her children, Craig, who she welcomed with one of her former partners, Raymond Hill. She also has among her children Ike Jr. and Michael, who she adopted. Those were Ike Sr.'s children she adopted when they were married, and Ronnie, who she had together with Ike. Craig, though, died in 2018. Tina Turner, for her part, continued to create art even after leaving the stage. When she decided that she no longer wanted to perform, she said she devoted so much of her life to just making sure that other people were happy, that she wanted to look more inwardly at trying to become happy herself, leading to a book that she published called Happiness Becomes You.
Yeah, and it was interesting. A few years ago, she actually sat down with our own Gayle King at her home near Zurich, Switzerland. I remember this interview. It was fascinating to hear about her reflections on her own life. And in fact, at that time, they spoke of her then recently published memoir called My Love Story. And it's a book that Turner told Gayle she had to be convinced to write. She did not actually think that she wanted to do it, but she told Gayle, okay, this is what she said, I'll do it because there's still a lot to be said. But that was a moment of reflection in which she had an opportunity to look back on that 5-decade career, an extraordinary body of work from Tina Turner, really one of the biggest stars ever in music, selling more than 200 million records, an extraordinary feat. And as I said, an influential figure that generations after her would look to for her style, for her showmanship, for the energy and the vitality that she brought to her performances, but also famously, as we've talked about, what she had endured and the triumphs that she had despite some of those challenges, particularly early on in her career and her life.
You know, when discussing her Broadway musical, there was an interview that she gave talking about what audiences, how they would react to seeing that violence on the stage. And she felt like it was an important part of her authentic story. And she brought so much sparkle, so much pizzazz. And when you think about her body of work, Proud Mary, What's Love Got to Do with It, We Don't Need Another Hero, and of course, Simply the Best, there's to go on and on and on. There's so much empowerment in all of those songs. And I think that that's part of the reason why Tina Turner continues not only to have been an icon for the time period in which she was top of the charts, but for so long afterwards. And you know, not a lot of people actually know that she became a naturalized Swiss citizen. She was
Yes.
living in Switzerland recently, together with her most recent husband. My children were doing a report, Elaine, on her from her beginnings in Nutbush, Tennessee, to becoming a Swiss citizen. And they actually taught me so much about Tina Turner just recently. And it goes to, I think, that long-standing message of
Yes.
being a survivor, of
Yes.
no matter what circumstances you were born into, you have power that lies within you.
Absolutely. And it was a sense of defiance, too, right, that came through in her music. Just absolute staunch strength in who she was, and you could feel that power resonate. And it also had to do with her voice, which is something else that Gayle King asked Tina Turner about back in 2019. And Tina Turner herself told Gayle, "I had the strange voice that most girl singers didn't have." And she described it as deep, and it goes even deeper. But that was part of her charisma. That was part of her energy. That is part of certainly what drew audiences to her, and contributed to that winning formula through the years for her. Because it's interesting that she herself in the beginning, she told Gayle, did not like the sound of her voice. She thought it was kind of ugly, she said, because it didn't sound like Diana Ross. But then afterwards, she said that she thought that it sounded like the guys. And so it was really interesting to hear about the way in which she came to really find the power in her own voice.
And we see a statement from her spokesperson there. Oh, we just lost it. I was going to read it to you all, but apparently it's gone at this moment. Oh, there we have it back up again. "It is with great sadness that we announce the passing of Tina Turner. With her music and her boundless passion for life, she enchanted millions of fans around the world. Tina, we will miss you dearly." Of course, this is breaking news. The tributes are only now starting to roll in, but we can imagine that they will be widespread because she had such an international popularity and that inspiration that had fans over decades and decades of her career.
You know, legend is a word that we hear a lot about, but it is so apt in this conversation to describe this figure, really a towering figure, if you think about it, over the decades in music. Again, if you're just joining us, we have just gotten word through her spokesperson that Tina Turner has died at the age of 83. We've been talking a bit about her biography. She was born Anna Mae Bullock back in 1939 in Nutbush, Tennessee. She shot to fame and stardom as the singer in the band Tina Turner Revue. Later, though, as we've been talking about, came to be successful in her own right as a solo artist, as an individual artist, displaying incredible energy, vitality on stage, thrilling millions of fans, selling hundreds of millions of records. Some of her many hits, as we've said, "What's Love Got to Do with It?" "Private Dancer," "Simply the Best." And so we are hearing from a number of people with their reflections today.
And one person that we are lucky to be joined by with his reflections, Kevin Frazier of Entertainment Tonight. Hey, Kevin, you hear Elaine and I talking about how Tina was a legend. As we're first reacting to this news of her passing, what are your first thoughts?
My first thoughts are what a powerhouse she was and how so many performers today owe a debt of gratitude to Tina Turner because her performances were electric. You know, I'm old enough to remember her on TV in the Ike and Tina Turner Revue when she would play on different shows and the energy when they would perform Proud Mary, and how, you know, you have to remember at that time, school kids would imitate Tina Turner. You know, it was like this electric person on stage. And now you see it in so many other performers like a Beyonce. You see in her performances a nod to Tina Turner. And then a woman who was in financial trouble, had to fight her way out of a bad situation. And then in 1984, with the release of Private Dancer, took the world by storm. That's an album that sold 10 million copies.
Well, I think it's so interesting, as Elaine and I were talking, Kevin, about part of Tina's voice and part of her story is that grittiness, that realness, that for so long when she was part of the review, she didn't reveal. But when she felt like she was willing to share the truth about her life, so much more opened up for her. What was it about Tina Turner that you think really resonated with her fans?
I think that people, the second half of her career, because in the first half, it was just this groundbreaking artist and this music that everybody loved. In the second half, I think that people saw a survivor who was doing things on her terms. Because if you remember, that album really was a way of her letting out all those inner demons that she had held in for so long. And she began to tell the story. And then let's not forget Angela Bassett's brilliant portrayal of Tina and how she brought to light so many of the stories we didn't know about the abuse she suffered throughout her career. And also, there are other things about Tina Turner we have to remember. How she was a groundbreaker in the fact that she was the first African-American Black artist on the cover of Rolling Stone and the first female. People forget about that. There are so many things that she did, and she changed the way we looked at it. If you remember, in those early days of MTV, in those early 80s, there weren't a lot of Black artists on. So when we saw Tina walking, strutting down the street with What's Love Got to Do With It, you were like, wow. In that wig, in that denim outfit, it was electric. And, she went on to capture the world with that album, Private Dancer.
Electric is exactly the word to describe her performances. We want to bring into this conversation Joe Levy. He's the editor-at-large at Billboard. Joe, thanks very much for joining us. Your initial thoughts here on the news that Tina Turner has died at the age of 83.
We have lost a musical giant and one who was an icon for the persona, the way she presented herself, the performance, for the music that she made. I've just described several different aspects of her career that are titanic, simply as a symbol, as an iconic presence, important to a variety of communities, the fashion community, the performance community, the drag community. Simply just to look at her was to be in her power. But to see her perform and to hear her, absolutely titanic.
And Joe, I want to just read for our viewers a statement that we're just getting from Tina Turner's manager for 30 years, Roger Davies. He said, Tina was a unique and remarkable force of nature with her strength, incredible energy, and immense talent. From the first day I met her in 1980, she believed in herself completely when few others did at that time. It was a privilege and an honor to have been a close friend, as well as her manager for more than 30 years. I will miss her deeply. I wonder, Joe, if you could talk a bit about the timelessness of her appeal. Through the decades, generations of fans came to know and appreciate her music in a way that still very much resonates today.
Well, that's absolutely right. And that's partly because of what she and Roger Davies accomplished working together from 1980 forward, which was an entirely new career for an icon of the late 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. A rebirth. We would say, as a solo artist, no longer part of Icon Tina Turner, but a complete rebirth as a performer and as a musical artist. Very, very few people were able to change their sound to keep up with what was happening in the 1980s and retain the essence of what had made them a star in the 1960s as she had. And to do so and to become, on her own terms, a symbol of fierce independence and survival. We would now say that the stories that she told in her autobiography, we might classify them as Me Too stories. She was the subject of abuse. She was not taken seriously and given her independence, even though she is the reason that Ike Turner became a star. His name is known because of what she did with the music they made together. And yet, she was not given her own agency. She was not given her own respect. She was not given her own power. She took those things at a time, as Roger Davies, her manager, points out, in 1980, when no one was ready to take her seriously. She took herself seriously, and then she made the world take her seriously. And again, there are so many reasons to look to her and to be awed by her besides the music alone. And the music alone was enough. And I mean the music, what you hear on the records. We think often of the Tina Turner performance, which was earth-shaking and changed the way that many people performed on stage. Mick Jagger is very clear about the debt that he owes to her, as he owed to several other performers, icons, that he took and blended into a performance style of his own. But hers, if I say to you, Tina Turner, you think of what she looks like, how she moves, how she sings. Those are three different things. Three different things, each of them major accomplishments.
How she looks, how she moves, how she sings. I want to bring Kevin into this conversation because Tina had a style that was all her own. And while it was gorgeous and strong, I think it's worth noting it was also unapologetically black. She was proud of her blackness. And, you know, Kevin, you made the point that she was the first black woman to ever be on the cover of Rolling Stone. I want to give some space for us to talk about her legacy, particularly as one of those legendary forces pushing for acceptance and greater understanding of the black experience in America.
Well, the first thing you have to think about is how that album, how that Private Dancer album crossed over. It was rock and roll, it was pop music, but in the African American community, it was seen as Tina Turner music. And so that is why that appealed to so many people, because it was like, wow, it was a risk that she took. And it seemed like it would be crazy for her to do something like that. But it was groundbreaking, and she was accepted all the way around. And I think back to that incredible concert in Rio where you see that massive crowd and how she was soaking in the moment and realizing that she had now skyrocketed to dizzying heights, higher than ever before. And maybe that's also explains why she chose to live the last portion of her life quiet, in solitude, outside of Zurich, and kind of quietly taking in everything she did. But as a black woman, she was able to scale and go to a place where few others had before. And if you look back at those artists that meant so much to us in the 60s, how they struggled, and she was the one who broke out and changed everything.
Yeah, she talked about the racism that she'd felt, particularly coming up with some execs, one disparaging her in a particularly profound but perhaps all too common way. And Turner said once that these difficult experiences, quote, could have shattered me, but instead became fuel for my journey, propelling me upward.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, because I want to go back to this idea that Joe kind of brought up a moment ago, that her own story of triumph and what she overcame would be classified today as a Me Too kind of story. But back then, it was a time when women weren't necessarily believed, and a black woman, in particular, sharing this must have been a courageous act at a time when she was really, from a career point of view, not doing well at all. Can you talk about the symbolism of Tina Turner finding her voice, finding that power, and then succeeding as she told that truth that was her own, that was so painful and so difficult? You know, this, again, in the 80s was not a period when women were coming forward in the way that they have come forward in recent years to talk about what the challenges are that they've faced.
Well, Tina was very open about the fact that, you know, she performed under duress many times when she was with Ike. and whether it was putting makeup to cover up the bruises or whether it were bruises all over her body. She was hiding a sinister secret for so long. And for her to escape that, and then on her own, because remember, she gave up everything. It wasn't like she left with anything. She gave up everything to start over again. And when she started over again, she started with an inner power and she believed in herself. Think about this. She is a 2-time Hall of Famer, not once, but 2 times for her solo career and also for what she did with Ike. And in the end, without her, Ike wouldn't have been mentioned in so many of the musical circles. But we always have to stop and look at Tina Turner as a survivor who never allowed herself to be a victim. She always pushed onward. When she had nothing, she pushed forward and she believed in herself. And that's the belief that brought her from Anna Mae to Tina Turner.
Joe, I want to give you a question about her musical legacy. You know, it was interesting when we first began to hear these rumblings that Tina Turner had passed away. We were all talking about how to describe her. Some people saying she was the queen of rock and roll, the queen of soul, others just calling her simply the best. What would you say her lasting music legacy is?
Well, again, I think the interesting thing about her is that she has more than one legacy. She has a musical legacy that goes back to 1960s when she is taking with a form of R&B and bringing it to the rock audience. And that is something that they did very successfully. They had a habit of taking from those who took from them. They would cover the Beatles. They would cover Creedence Clearwater Revival. These people took inspiration from black music. Ike and Tina Turner took it back, made one of their biggest and signature hits out of a Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Yeah, Proud Mary from CCR originally.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That. Exactly.
Yeah.
The song that most people think of when they think of Ike and Tina Turner. And then she has the second
Joe,
legacy
we have
as an 80s
we have to
solo
pause
artist.
you. I'm so sorry about that. Joe Levy, Kevin Frazier, thank you both so much. We have more news here on CBS News.
We leave you with more from Tina Turner.
You simply